CLEAR, Cannabis Law Reform. Peter, good afternoon to you. And there was probably a fair bit in there that you might concur with Mick on, and that issue of legality or illegality is quite central, right?
Well, it's great to hear some common sense from somebody who, has been at the sharp end and knows the reality. I've just been indulging myself in the rather depressing process of watching the debates in the House of Commons from yesterday. And it's laughable. It's not like, but it's not funny. It's not funny at all. It's just tragic that we have ministers who are inventing falsehoods to support their own position. Kate Malthouse saying, for instance, yesterday that it's widely accepted that the legalisation of cannabis in California has been a disaster. That is just the direct opposite of the truth. We now have 18 states in the UK where cannabis is fully legal for adults.
In the US.
In the US. And every single one of the governors of those states has pronounced it a roaring success, wants to keep doing it, and thinks it's a good thing. And we also seem to be completely overlooking the fact that just last week, Germany has announced that it is to legally regulate cannabis for adults, and which will become the largest single recreational market for cannabis in the world.
Wow.
Following on from Canada has a population of 35 million, but Germany has a population, I believe, of 80 million.
Absolutely.
So, in addition to that, the Dutch government, where cannabis has been in this strange sort of middle ground for so many years of being almost decriminalised, but not quite, has now instituted an experiment whereby it is legally producing cannabis to be legally sold to the coffee shops. They're moving that way. Luxembourg is legalising growing your own cannabis. So, it is pitiful. And the other thing that is, infuriates me and infuriates many other people is the hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of these idiots in the House of Commons who lounge around in their subsidised bars. Apparently, we now hear sniffing cocaine, half of them, or according to the Sunday Times. Boris Johnson, Boris Johnson has a lot. If you were on the London party scene, as I was in the 90s, and you didn't see Boris Johnson falling out disgrace. And I think the word that your previous speaker came out with right at the beginning, I think, is the crucial word, and that is control.
Just tell us, Peter, sorry to interject, but just because that's brilliant what you've been saying, but what do you think if tomorrow, let's just take cannabis, which is the area you're mostly familiar with, if that was legalized, you could buy it, Boots would sell it, there'd be different places where you could get it from, what would be the almost immediate benefits to a society of doing that?
Well, the biggest benefit will be taking it out of the hands of criminals. What we have to recognise is the cannabis market. We spend £6 billion every year on cannabis in the UK. And in addition to that, 300,000 people grow their own. Now, all that money goes to fund organised crime. And it's that money from cannabis that actually funds the much more profitable trade in Class A's and the whole scourge of county lines, etc. But the money to do this to begin with comes from cannabis.
Sure.
And if we can take this market away from the gangsters, you'll never eliminate it completely. Let's be clear about that. You won't ever wipe out the harms of drugs. You won't ever stop children getting their hands on drugs. But we can do what we've done with alcohol and tobacco, where we minimise the harms. That surely is government's responsibility. When there's a demand for something, be it drugs, be it driving, be it travel, what government does is it steps in and it takes action to minimise the dangers and minimise the harms. But what our government does with drugs is everything it does maximises the dangers.
So it actually compounds all of the very problems. And you would think, say what you like about Boris Johnson, we don't doubt that he's a very bright chap. He's a very clever guy. He must know this.
Of course he knows it. Of course he knows it. They all, a lot of them do. A lot of them do know it. There are a few but the Conservative Party is no longer the Tory party of old. I was a Conservative voter for 45 years, because I believed in true Tory values of liberty, small government, free markets. But now what we have is an authoritarian, hard right government, xenophobic in the extreme, and believing that, enforcement and cracking down is going to work when country in the world is going in the opposite direction.
Indeed. Peter, thank you. Listen, I step in because we hit the clock. That's passionate stuff from Peter Reynolds. Peter is the president of CLEAR. They campaign for cannabis law reform. You could hear it in everything he said there. The question I'm still left with, and it was actually articulated by Keith in Shropshire as well, so I'm not sure how we would get less drug users by making it legal. No one can ever seem to answer that question. Maybe we should put that one to Peter as well while he was with us. I didn't get your text in time, Keith. Thank you. 0344